everyone. Today we are going to discuss how to sew your pointe shoe ribbons and elastic. We are going to go step by step through how to cut, how to place, and how to sew your ribbons and your elastic, both 18-inch and 36-inch. The first thing that we are going to do is cut our ribbons. Your ribbons come in one long piece that is 2.5 yards long. You are going to take your ribbon and you're going to meet them end to end and then cut the entire length in half so that you have 2 pieces of equal length. You are then going to take each half and cut it in half again so that you have 4 equal lengths, 2 for each shoe. So that is one set. You're going to take the other length, knead it together, and then cut that in half. So now you have 4 equal lengths, 2 for each shoe. The next cuts we are going to make are your elastics. There are 2 types of elastic that we can use for our pointe shoes. One is a 36-inch length, which is enough to do X elastics on your pointe shoes, or the 18-inch length, which is enough to do a single loop around the ankle. We'll start with our 18-inch length. You are going to meet the elastic end to end, fold it in half, and then cut it in half so you have 2 pieces of equal length. This will be enough for 1 for each shoe. If we are doing the X elastic, we have a 36-inch piece, and we are going to fold it in half so that each end meets, and we are going to cut it in half. We are then going to take each half and fold it in half again and cut it in half. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So now you should have 4 pieces of equal length, and we're going to use, in this case, if we're doing the X elastic, we would do 2 for each shoe so that we have enough to make an X formation on each shoe. The next thing that we are going to discuss is how to place your elastic. For elastic placement for a single loop around the ankle, we are going to take one of our 9-inch pieces and we're going to lay it next to each shoe. We will be using 1 piece for each shoe. For placement, a good tool to use is to find the back seam of the shoe. Once you find the back seam, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to put your thumb on one side of the back seam. That is going to be your measurement as to how far out you have to place the elastic. So we're going to place our thumb there and we're going to take a pencil and we're going to mark with the pencil where to place the elastic. It's going to go 1 thumb length out from the back seam. We're going to do the same thing on the other side of the back seam. So we're going to place our thumb there and then put a pencil mark right there. So now you should have 2 pencil marks on the back of the shoe. We're going to lay that down and you're going to grab one of your elastics. Now, you have gone home with a stitch kit if you are a brand new fit. If you have not, you already have hopefully a stitch kit in your pointe shoe bag so that you can sew your shoes. In your stitch kit comes 2 heavy-duty needles and the heavy-duty waxed thread so that you can get through your pointe shoes. And then this handy tool which pulls the thread and holds the thread through just like dental floss. You are going to thread your needle, knot it, and then pull it through and trim it down. With that needle and thread, you are going to sew down 1/2 of your elastic, lining up your elastic with the pencil mark. There are 2 places that you can place the elastic. You can do it on the outside of the shoe or you can do it on the inside of the shoe. Personal preference and or studio preference, be sure to consult your teacher and or your studio as to where they would like your elastic placed, outside or inside. Once you match up with that pencil mark, go ahead and sew down the elastic to your pointe shoe. You can do either of two stitches. We can do a whip stitch, which is allowing the elastic to be sewn down by going underneath the drawstring and then looping up through, or you can go in through the pointe shoe and tack it down and sew it down across here right underneath the binding and match it up with the sewing placement where the binding is. If you do the whip stitch and you're going up and through, just be careful not to sew through the drawstring. Once one side is tacked down, the dancer is going to put her foot inside her pointe shoe and stand up tall. While she's standing up tall, you're going to bring the elastic around the ankle, and where the elastic meets the other side of the pointe shoe while she's standing tall and flat, we should get a very tight, snug pull on the elastic. The elastic should not be baggy. It should be very taut. Where that tightness sits and where it meets up with the binding of the shoe, mark with a pencil on the elastic the tightness that you need. Have the dancer remove the shoe. You should have this one piece tacked down, and then you are going to match up the two pencil marks and sew down the other side. So you're matching up the pencil mark for the tightness and the pencil mark that we made that shows the distance we have to go out from the back seam. So you're going to match there and there, okay? And sew that down. And then from there, you may have some excess on the inside that you will trim down. And do not trim until you have the dancer try this on in case we have to loosen it or we have to tighten it. Once it is perfect, then you can go ahead and trim any excess off the shoe.
Our next step is to sew our X elastic onto our pointe shoes. As you see, we have laid out the 4 pieces of elastic that we'll need for one pair of pointe shoes. We need 2 for one shoe and 2 for the other. And we have our stitch kit, which we highly recommend. This is a great resource for your pointe shoes. It comes with 2 heavy-duty needles. It comes with a full spool of heavy-duty thread, and it carries everything inside the kit, so it's really great to use. We have our needle already threaded, ready to go. The first thing that we're going to do is mark on our pointe shoes where to sew our elastics. Our suggestion is to find the back seam on the shoe. So for your first placement, a good rule of thumb is to remember your thumb and your pinky, and these will act as guides for your placement. Finding your back seam, you're going to put your thumb on one side of the back seam. When you have your thumb there, you're going to take your pencil and mark with your pencil where your thumb sits on the outside. So we're going to make a pencil mark there. Move your thumb to the other side of the back seam. So line your thumb up right to the side and put another pencil mark right there. Where your pencil marks sit is where you're going to start your first elastic that sits on the back of the pointe shoe. So it's going to line up right there. Now, there are 2 ways to sew your elastic on the back of the pointe shoe. You can sew it on the outside of the shoe, or you can choose to sew it on the inside of the shoe. But our recommendation is to sew it this far out from the back seam of your pointe shoe. The function of the back elastic is to pull the heel of the shoe up onto your heel. The next placement that we're going to mark on your shoe is the elastic forward. Our recommendation is to use your pinky for this placement. Here we're going to find the side seam, and you're going to place your pinky forward of the side seam. Where the pinky sits, you're going to mark with your pencil pinky forward of the side seam and just put a small pencil mark there. We're going to flip the shoe and do it on the other side. So find the side seam, you're going to put your pinky forward of the side seam and then just put a small pencil mark there. Where that pencil mark sits is where your elastic is going to get placed forward. So it's going to line up there and then get placed forward. In this case, the elastic is sewn on the inside of the shoe, just lined up with that pencil mark. So now with our elastic sewn on the back, that's the first thing that you're going to do. So you found that placement there, and we're either sewing our elastics on the outside of the shoe or the inside. And you have sewn these down nice and snug. You should have at this point 2 elastics coming out of the back of the shoe. So we are going to pretend that these are sewn down. Okay, so you'll have 2 elastics sewn down coming out of the back of the shoe. Our next step is to have the dancer put her foot inside the shoe and stand tall. While the dancer is standing tall, you are going to take one of the elastics and pull it across the dancer's foot. You're going to pull it nice and snug, not cutting off circulation, but nice and snug. And you're going to meet the elastic with the pencil mark that we made and line it up where it's meeting that pencil mark and is nice and taut. At this point, you're going to mark on the elastic where it meets the binding for the tightness you want in the elastic. So if this dancer was standing and we want that tightness, you're going to mark right on the elastic where it meets the binding, right there. You're going to do the same thing to the other side. So we would let go of that, pretending that elastic is hanging there. You're going to bring it across, meet that pencil mark there. And if that's the tightness that we want while the dancer is standing, we want it nice and snug. You're going to just mark on that elastic where it meets the binding, that pencil mark. Now you're going to let go and let the dancer come out of the shoe. And then what you're going to do is you're going to match up the 2 pencil marks here. So you're going to match up here and here. This back part is already sewn down, and you're going to sew down the front of the shoe. And you can either do this with a whip stitch, which is going up and underneath the drawstring binding. Careful not to sew through the drawstring because we need this drawstring to be functional. So you can go up and under, or you can just sew the elastic into the shoe here. But we're matching up those 2 pencil marks right there. And then the shoe should be completely sewn down there. You will trim off any excess, so you'll get rid of this excess elastic there, if you have any. And then you'll sew down the other side the exact same way. So pretending this is sewn down in the back, you'll match up these 2 pencil marks here in the front, just like that. And sew that down. And then you will have your X elastics completely sewn. And that is it. And then you'll do the same thing to the other shoe. The next thing that we are going to discuss is placement of the ribbon. Again, we are going to use our stitch kit. For placement of the ribbon, we are going to take the back of the shoe and fold it into the point shoe as so. You are going to open up the shoe, making a pseudo triangle. When the shoe opens up like this, you are going to mark the peaks of that triangle just with a pencil mark here, like that, on one side, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side right here. So pencil mark and pencil mark. These are standard ways to sew your satin ribbons. We're going to open this up, and then you're going to find the pencil mark. You're going to take one of your ribbons and you're going to place it satin side out. You're going to find that pencil mark and take your ribbon and line it up just like that and pull it straight up and down and then turn it on a slight angle forward. You're going to leave a little excess at the bottom and then fold that up 1 square. Here we recommend sewing the ribbon down in a square with an X inside of that. That is a very secure sewing option. The other way that you can sew your ribbons is in a whip stitch, just like you did your elastics, going through the underside of the binding and then up through the top of the binding, securing your satin ribbons to the shoe. So whip stitches go underneath and then through the top of the binding. Careful not to sew through the binding so that you're grabbing the drawstring. We still need the drawstring to be functional. The important part of sewing your ribbons is to grab the muslin on the inside and not sew through the satin of the shoe. We don't want to see your sewing on the outside. Once you get your satin ribbon sewn on the one side, you are going to repeat this exact process on the other side. When your satin ribbons are sewn, if you have the elastic sewn in the back, it should seat as ribbons and then elastic. The function of the ribbons are to not only hold your shoe on your foot, but to really pull up the arch and instep close to the dancer's foot, while the elastic function is to pull the heel of the shoe and secure it up on the dancer's foot. If you have sewn X elastics on your dancer's shoe, it should go elastic, ribbon, elastic. And that's for a nice, secure, tight fit. There are many other ways to sew ribbons and elastic on a dancer's shoe, and be sure to consult with your studio or your dance teacher if they would like you to sew it a specific way. What we are sharing here are standard ways to sew your ribbons and elastic.